Welcome to the Savage Executive Podcast. My name is Steve Smith. Whether you're running a company, leading a ministry, or navigating both, you're in the right place. Every week, we bring you practical frameworks, real stories, and biblical wisdom for leadership. This is wisdom for the weight that you carry. Let's get into it. What good is building a successful business or a thriving ministry if you lose yourself in the process? What's the point of growth if growth means sacrificing your health, your family, your faith, or even your sanity? I've sat across the table from CEOs who built $30 million companies and were quietly miserable. I've walked with executive pastors who grew their churches by hundreds, if not thousands, of people while their marriages were quietly falling apart. I've consulted with nonprofit directors who were so consumed by mission they forgot about the man or the woman in the mirror. Success without sustainability is just a slower form of failure. Today, we're talking about margin multipliers. These are operational strategies that let you scale without losing your soul, because growth shouldn't cost you everything that matters. And the good news is, it doesn't have to. There's a way to do more without doing more of yourself. A way to expand output without proportionately expanding effort. A way to build systems that create capacity instead of consuming it. That's what we're covering today. 5 margin multipliers that will change how you operate, whether you're running a business, a church, or a nonprofit. Let me start by defining the term first. A margin multiplier is an operational choice that creates more output without proportionally more input. It's leverage. It's the difference between working harder and working structurally smarter. Here are the 5 that have transformed how I operate and how the organizations that I serve operate. Multiplier number 1, documented systems. This is something we've talked about before, but here's a simple test. If you were hit by a bus tomorrow, or if you took a 3-week sabbatical, would your organization function without you? Most leaders answer that question with an uncomfortable pause. The rule that I teach every leader that I work with is every time you do something more than twice, document it. Not complex documentation, not a 50-page manual. Simple, step-by-step playbooks that a capable person can follow without your interpretation. When it's documented, anyone can do it. When anyone can do it, you're not the bottleneck. Documentation is multiplication. I worked with an executive pastor who was the single point of failure for at least a dozen of their critical processes. Volunteer onboarding, donor acknowledgement, staff communication protocols. None of it was written down. It all lived in his head. He was brilliant, but he was also buried. We spent weeks documenting, and the result? He recovered 8 to 10 hours per week. Not because anything changed about the work, but because he stopped being the only person who could do it. What processes currently live only in your head? Those are your highest priority documentation targets. Multiplier number 2, async-first. Not every conversation needs to be a meeting. Not every question needs an immediate answer. And not every decision requires you in the room. We've conditioned ourselves to believe that responsiveness equals availability, and that availability equals leadership. It doesn't. What it equals is exhaustion. The async-first discipline means defaulting to asynchronous communication, email, recorded video, shared documents, voice memos, and reserving synchronous time for what truly requires real-time interaction. Think about your last 5 meetings. How many of them could have been a well-structured email? How many could have been a Loom video? How many required everyone's simultaneous presence? When I help leaders audit their calendars, the number is always almost the same. 60 to 70% of meetings could be replaced by async alternatives. That's hours per week, back in your margin account. One caveat, async first doesn't mean async always. Crisis, conflict, complex collaboration, these require real-time presence. The skill is knowing the difference. Default to async, escalate to synchronous when the situation demands it. Multiplier number 3, decision delegation. Every decision that passes through you is a cost. It costs your time, your mental bandwidth, and the momentum of the person waiting on your answer. Decision delegation means defining clearly, in advance, which decisions your team can make without you. Give your team leaders a spending threshold. Give your department heads authority to resolve customer or donor issues within defined parameters. Give your managers the autonomy to hire for certain roles. Every decision they make is one you don't have to. And more importantly, every decision they make is a deposit into their leadership development account. I want to be clear, delegation is not abdication. It's designed handoff. You're not removing accountability, you're redistributing execution. You define the boundaries, you review the outcomes, but you are not the bottleneck between the question and the answer. For ministry leaders, this often shows up in giving authority. Who on your team can approve budget variances under a certain threshold? Who can say yes to a volunteer request without checking with you first? Who can represent the organization in a vendor conversation? Only the senior pastor can approve that is a capacity constraint waiting to be removed. Multiplier number 4, batched deep work. Strategic and creative work requires a fundamentally different cognitive mode than operational and responsive work. You cannot do both at the same time. When you try, you do neither well. Batched deep work is the practice of scheduling concentrated, uninterrupted blocks, 2 to 3 hours minimum, for your highest leverage thinking. This is when you do strategy, creative problem solving, complex planning, and vision work. The research on this is not ambiguous. More gets done in 3 focused hours than in 8 fragmented ones. Cal Newport has written extensively on this in Deep Work. The cognitive cost of task switching is enormous. It takes an average of 23 minutes to fully re-engage after an interruption. That means 5 interruptions can cost you nearly 2 hours of effective work. Block these hours on your calendar. Protect them like appointments you cannot miss, because for the health of your organization, you can't. Move email, move Slack, move everything that isn't the work that only you can do. I know the objection. People need access to me, and that's true, but your team needs your best thinking more than they need your immediate response. Batch your availability. Be accessible, but in defined windows. Protect the hours that make everything else possible. Multiplier number 5, strategic no. The most powerful word in the leader's vocabulary isn't yes, it's no. Every yes is a no to something else. Every commitment that you make is a commitment made with limited resources. Your time, your team's capacity, your organizational focus. When you say yes to everything, you're actually saying no to excellence. The strategic no is not about being unhelpful or unresponsive. It's about being ruthlessly clear on what you are optimizing for and saying no to everything that doesn't serve that. This is particularly hard for ministry leaders. You became a leader because you care about people and impact. Saying no feels like saying no to the mission. But I want to challenge that assumption. Saying yes to everything is also saying no to the things that only your organization can do. It's saying no to depth in favor of breadth. It's saying no to sustainability in favor of activity. Margin is not something that you find, it's something that you create by deciding what you're not going to do. These 5 multipliers are not one-time implementations. They're ongoing disciplines. Every week I ask, did I document something? Did I default to async? Did I delegate a decision? Did I protect deep work? Did I say no to something that would have diluted my focus? 5 questions. Weekly cadence, compounding results over time. Let me tell you what happened when I applied these disciplines to my own calendar. It was a few years ago that I did a deep dive into my calendar and subsequently the organization's calendar. In honest moments, I found that meetings that we felt were important were only happening because we had always done it that way. We cut 2 of our weekly meetings down to once monthly. And honestly, we accomplished more because of intentionality and focus. I started delegating decisions that were once running through my office, but didn't need to. I've placed deep work time on my calendar that doesn't get pierced by the urgent. I've had to learn to say no to good things to protect the very best things. The same principle applies in business and in ministry. The executive pastor who moves from chief executor to strategic developer. The nonprofit director who builds a team that can deliver on mission without daily heroics. The CEO who can vision the next phase of business rather than only seeing what is right in front. Margin multipliers don't just help you scale, they help people around you grow. In the book of Mark, chapter 1, verse 35, something we referenced recently, but I want to go back to it. It says, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. This verse has always struck me as profound operational principle. Jesus, in the middle of an intensive season of ministry, healing, teaching, crowds pressing on every side, intentionally withdrew. He protected margin. He defaulted to solitude before the demands arrived. If Jesus needed margin, how much more do we? But there's more here. In the next few verses, his disciples find him and say, everyone is looking for you. The crowd wanted more. The demands were real. And Jesus said, let us go somewhere else to the nearby villages so I can preach there also. That is why I have come. You see, he knew his mission. He said yes to that and structured no to other things. That's not neglect. That's clarity. That's the strategic no in its purest form. Margin isn't selfishness. It isn't laziness. It's how you sustain long-term impact without short-term burnout. The leader who builds no margin eventually has nothing left to give. And no one is served by that outcome. Protect your solitary place. It makes everything else possible. This week, I want you to implement 1 margin multiplier. Just start with 1. If you don't have documented systems, document 1 process this week. The one that costs you the most time when you have to explain it again and again. If you're drowning in meetings, audit your next 2 weeks and convert 3 of them to async updates. If every decision tends to run through you, identify one category of decisions and delegate it with clear parameters. If you have no deep work time, block 2 hours on your calendar this week and protect them like a non-negotiable appointment. If you're saying yes to too much this week, say no to one thing that doesn't align with your primary mission. One multiplier this week, that's the practice. If you want to be a part of the conversation, join me at savageexecutive.com. Building margin that walks you through identifying exactly where your time is going and where multipliers can be applied is something that I love talking about. Do a multiplication audit. It takes about 20 minutes, and the clarity that it creates is worth far more. If this episode helped you, would you take 30 seconds and leave a review? Reviews are how other leaders find this show. Every rating helps put these frameworks in front of someone who needs them. And if you're carrying weight that feels bigger than one podcast episode can address, that's exactly what the executive partnership is for. It's my highest touch point engagement, working directly with you on the operations, finances, and leadership clarity of your organization. If that sounds like what you need, you can learn more at savageexecutive.com. Next week, we are in Proverbs, 5 ancient principles that have more to say about modern business than most MBA programs. That's episode 10 for next week. Proverbs for Profit. Don't miss it. This is The Savage Executive. I'm Steve Smith, and I will see you next week.